Welcome back to Max Level EDC, and today we're going to do a couple things. First, I bought a bunch of brand new Leatherman multi-tools that we are going to unbox, and we're going to talk about what you should look for to make sure your tool is in good condition as you get it. We're also going to cover some custom multi-tools that I have put together myself, and we are going to address a few other aspects of Leatherman in general. Let's go ahead and get started. So first thing we're going to do is cover these, well, custom, I want to say custom multi-tools as if I built them myself, but what I did is assembled them from parts of Leatherman multi-tools. So this is a combination of 3 different multi-tools, the Surge, Supertool 300M, and also the Supertool 300 EOD. This one is a combination of the Leatherman Core as well as the Leatherman Surge, and has components also from the Leatherman Wave and one custom tool as well. This is actually going to be a gift for a friend, and I wanted to make some sort of hybrid outdoors slash urban survival tool. So that was sort of the concept of this. So we kick things off with a blade that you'll probably have never seen. This is an M390 blade that I found for the Leatherman Surge on AliExpress. As far as I know, Leatherman has never made a high wear-resistant steel blade for the Leatherman Surge platform, and this fits absolutely perfect. In fact, it's a better lockup than even the original blade was. So very, very happy with that. On the other side, we have the T-shank holder, of course, because it's one of the best implements from the Leatherman Surge. Still one of the best in my opinion, and makes it still the king of multi-tools, which is why we have it. On the inside, we have a plier from one of the older tools. Unfortunately, did not have a stainless steel version, but I actually think it looks kind of cool. So we'll start from the inside here. We have 2 flatheads, 2 large flatheads, one that was converted into a chisel. It's pretty self-explanatory. And then we also have a Leatherman Wave scissor. Now, what's weird about this, the Wave scissor, or the rebar scissor, it does go in and sort of locks, but not really strong, and that's fine. It's a scissor. You're not putting that type of pressure on it. It's not like a blade where the lockup has to be really, really, really secure. So it doesn't require any modification. It's just a drag and drop into the frame, and that way I can keep a scissor in the tool that's going to be good for hygiene. It's going to be good for cutting fabric, you know, in the little like tags and that kind of thing. So it's still worth having, but I didn't want to dedicate a long implement slot. And on the inside, we have a full-length saw, which I really like, something that you couldn't do if we had the Surge side because of the arrangement of the tools, right? I don't have a saw that can easily fit in the serrated blade slot, so we're going with the Supertool 300 handle. There's another reason for that as well, we'll talk about once I close everything back up. So we have the long saw, which is going to be longer than the Surge saw anyway. We have a can opener, bottle opener combo, reamer all. We have the full 3-dimensional Phillips from the Leatherman Core, and then we also have a secondary file. So the reason for the secondary file might be like, why not go with another blade, is because there are times when you will have a metal saw in the T-shank holder, and that still gives you access to a file without having to carry additional components. The other thing is that sometimes you need a longer file, and you don't, and the one on the diamond file is also shorter. So I go back and forth with this, but I think it's still probably the better choice. It kind of gives you always access to both the saw and the file. Even if you somehow manage to lose this in the woods, you still have access to the primary tools. Now, the reason I don't like the bit driver is I find that the 3-dimensional Phillips to be a lot more useful, and because it can go into recessed screw areas, it just definitely has an advantage. The other thing that's kind of note here is because you have the Supertool 300 frame and the saw extends from the back like the small tools, you can actually use it to create extended reach. So this is one thing that's really cool about the Supertool 300. You can grab the tool like this, and if you have to get something kind of out of your normal reach or recessed into a small area, you can actually set up the tool like so, and then you have a longer reach. But if you have a implement coming out of the center, you only have 2 handle lengths, right? So that gives you a 3rd handle length. And the other thing that you want to utilize with this hybrid is the ergonomic advantage. So by doing this, you actually can use these blades for a lot longer time without getting any sort of hand fatigue, and certainly not having as many hot spots. So if you're not wearing gloves, it's a bit of an advantage to have that. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this version down in the comments. And this one I built for myself. I spent a long time just thinking about this, and I finally pulled the trigger, and I broke down 3 brand new, well, basically brand new tools: the Supertool 300 EOD, the Supertool 300M, and the Leatherman Surge. Give or take around $400 in multi-tools compact into one. So on the outside, we have your standard 420 HC blade, and the only thing I've done here is I've added a proper notch for sharpening with a Dremel tool. So that's pretty much the only thing I've done here. Otherwise, it's basically the same. We have the scissors on the opposite side, and what I've done is actually ground it so that it comes to a finer point. I'm also going to remove a little bit of the front, because as you can see, it might be obvious that you see how it's slightly rounded right there? So you don't get quite the precision, and I figure we may as well kind of finish that up. But the one that I'm having here, it's got a lot of play in it, and so you do have to apply a lot of lateral force. So the shorter the blades, the better it'll cut, the actual length from the pivot to the end. And so removing a little bit at the tip is not going to be an issue. That's something I have left to do. Now on the inside, we have the Supertool 300M plier. Notice the little threading there? This works with the hole cut into the frame, which will allow you to install a cleaning rod for a firearm or other items that could work with this threading. So I haven't even expanded the concept yet, but I think there's some expansion that's worth noting using these little holes. So curious to hear your thoughts and what you think I might be able to do with it. Now on this side, and I go back and forth between using 2 flatheads like I did here, and then setting it up like this. So I have the long, narrow flathead from the Supertool 300. I actually had to make some adjustments in order for it to fit in that slot, because there's some parts of the frame that prevent it from going in. And then I have the pry tool from the Supertool 300M, and I'm trying it. We'll see how it goes, but as of right now, I'm happy with it. And then a lot of stuff had to be done with this other side. So a Supertool 300 has little spacers on either side that move the tools away and create like a little lockup for the blades. I have the one on this side, but as you can see here, I've removed it on the other. And instead I've put a couple of washers, and on top of that I have ground down the lip that's designed for additional ergonomics, right? And this has allowed me to fit an additional tool inside. So as far as the tool set is concerned, it's a pretty interesting one. We start with the reamer awl from the Supertool 300M. So this is a really, really cool tool because it allows you to drill far, far deeper holes. I actually don't even need the sewing eye, but you know, because it might technically weaken the ability of this thing, but I actually I'm fine with it. I did make a slight modification to the back, giving it a 90-degree spine, making it yet another surface for striking a ferro rod. I angled it a little bit more in so that it should actually drill holes a little bit easier, and I even sharpened the edges here. I did, however, leave this edge. I'm curious to see how it holds up and how it functions. We'll just have to play with it over time. Can opener, bottle opener combo with the wire stripper. I don't think that one needs to be changed all that much. What I did do, however, is I sharpened it at the very end. Everyone complains about not having a package opener as a separate tool, but the reality is you can just sharpen the can opener and it'll work great for draw cutting and get the job done, no problem. So that's what I've done here. Now, once again, we have the Phillips driver, my preference, and also because it can use a bit driver from the Leatherman rebar, and that is certainly my preferred way to do it. And that adapter will use the double-sided bits that Leatherman produces. It'll use double-sided bits from Weha, and it'll use standard 1/4 inch. So you kind of, basically, you get the bit extender functionality, but without having yet a third item. So I prefer that, and then this way you never ever lose the fact that you have the Phillips driver in your tool, ever. Like, it's always there. Now, on top of that, we have two things. We have a saw. This is the Supertool 300 saw that I've changed in shape to look more like a Victorinox saw, so it can be used also for drilling holes if needed. I've sharpened the spine even further, and yeah, just good. The black oxide coating one, they do that. They usually soften the edges by accident because they stonewash it. So having that slightly sharper edge, I think, makes a little bit of a difference. And then the last tool here is the T-shank holder from the Supertool 300 EOD. So you'll notice I also had to grind this down a little bit to kind of block its, to go in a little deeper because of this little tab. And I also had to modify the diamond file so that it would actually fit in here. So let me pull this out for just a second. There we go. It's a little bit stuck. There we go. And you'll notice I had to actually grind this down. So I used the Ken Onion blade grinder for this to kind of make sure it was as even as possible. But that's what you have to do if you want to fit it in this T-shank, because the T-shank holder on the Surge is designed to accommodate a lot of different thicknesses, but the one on the Supertool 300 EOD is not. It's designed for basically standard T-shank thickness, which is why I had to do that. So that gives me all of the functions that I really wanted in a single heavy use tool. Ergonomics in the plier are a little bit worse than a Leatherman Surge, but when it comes to using the blade long term, like if I'm outdoors and I want to, actually go to town on a piece of wood, this is actually incredibly comfortable in hand. The areas in the front are technically still gonna dig in a little bit, but it's really the backside that matters the most. All right, now with that, let's move on to the new tools I got in the most recent sale. Now, Ben from Texas Tool Crib has been singing the praises of this tool for a long time, and I didn't have one, and I figured I may as well check it out and see if it works for me as well as it works for him. This is the Raptor, oh, I guess it's upside down, Raptor Rescue, and I think it's the Rescue version, and this is a very, very cool folding pair of medical shears. Now, I already had a pair of the originals, so this is the original right here. I got it when they were like 50 bucks. It was great. So I got this, which has the pull cutter, belt cutter as well. And I have tried this and really, really enjoyed it. This one, and I've already pulled it out of the package, is technically a little bit more comfortable, but I was surprised to find it's actually thicker. Like, they made the handles thicker, and so it's technically fewer implements and is less compact. So yeah, I guess it is technically more comfortable, and if you use it a lot, that's great and all. But this one fits in the holster, and the holster is just freaking phenomenal. Let me go get that holster for a second. So this is what the original Raptor comes with, and I just freaking love this thing. So first of all, it has a really, really good sheath that allows you to keep it closed, but the genius part about this sheath is, in my opinion, the fact that it can also work open. So you can keep the tool ready to rock regardless of how you do it, and it has a little rotating clip that is really, really well designed. So you could just lift this and then you can actually rotate the tool as you see fit. Like, I really, really like that, and I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, this is locked in. Yeah, it doesn't work with this. So, kind of lame, but quality of the tool though, man, this is really slick. It is, however, very thick too. I got mixed feelings about it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, but I mean, personally, I would rather go with the slightly less comfortable but far more versatile original design. I think that this actually makes a little bit more sense for me personally. I'm curious to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Have you played with either one of these, and do you have a preference? Now I have a lot of components of the Leatherman Surge kind of floating around, bunch of little pieces, but when I built my custom tool, I ended up having to disassemble the last fully complete Surge in my collection. And I needed one for reference at all times. That's not going to be true for everyone. Obviously, you don't need one. I, however, do if we're going to make comparisons. So I went ahead and bought a brand new Leatherman Surge, and I thought this might also be a great opportunity to talk about what you need to look at when you are opening any Leatherman or any multi-tool in general. And so I'm going to talk about a few things that I check every single time. So the Leatherman Surge, like many people call it the king of multi-tools, is a really, really good one. And when you get it, you will get it as you see here, without a pocket clip, without a bit kit. And actually, I will be honest, I prefer exactly that. Now, would I like it to be less expensive? Sure, but you know, I got a 25% discount when I went to go purchase this one, and I thought, hey, you know, that's not so bad. Actually, that's back to where it used to be, or even a little bit less. So a few things of note when you're checking this. So first thing you want to do, take a look at your blades, take a look at the grind. I am really surprised, like in a positive way. This is a significant improvement over the grind I've received from Leatherman in the past. Like, not a little bit better, a lot better. Much more even, less waviness going up and down with different thick bevels. It looks like they're also supposed to have a sort of sharpening choil, but there's an area established for it. So if I were to grind a little like U-shape in there to kind of add to it, I think it would be a good idea. But it's left in such a way that if you were to use this on material that could get caught up in such a spot, this won't have that problem. So either way, I actually think they did a very, very good job here. And deployment is pretty good, nice and smooth. Nice and smooth on this, so check the deployment on all your tools. Make sure that it's not too tight. And you can see, even without using the little nail nick right there, I'm able to deploy this without any major issue. Flipping it over, the same thing is going to be true with the serrated blade. There's no lockup issues. You should check lockup, make sure there's no up and down play. There shouldn't be. And then the scissors, this one actually might be the best scissor I've received from any Surge. There's always going to be some play in the pivot, but I actually think this one actually has a little bit less than what I'm used to. So I'm not upset about that at all. The blades are sharp. Everything else looks pretty okay to me. So closing this up, we're going to go to the inside. And the most important thing you're always going to want to check with any multi-tool that has a pair of pliers is how tight is that pivot. So this one is within reason, but what people do not do and should always do is when you get any multi-tool, take it like so, take both hands and squeeze as hard as you can. Don't use mechanical force to do this, but use your hand strength to squeeze that tool as hard as you can. And the reason is sometimes the peening is in a weird shape where if you squeeze too hard, you can actually lock up that pivot. And I've had this happen with the Free Series tools and a couple others a number of times. And if it happens, it's a serious problem that probably needs a warranty claim, and you should send it back to the manufacturer. Okay, it's definitely not right. Now in this case, I don't have that issue. It's basically the same tightness that it was before I did the squeezing. So that's okay. Now, of course, they are still using these god-awful gap cutters, I'm gonna call them, because they continue to make this huge gap at the bottom. This is not true with the original cutters that used to be around. This is one from an older tool, and you can see there's basically no gap there. They're very, very, very little by comparison. Let me show you the difference. See that? Yeah. And why that matters with these is that if you were to just slide wire directly in, you're gonna have a hard time cutting. You're gonna have a hard time cutting them. You do have to kind of like consciously move the wire up into the spots that need to be used for the cutting, whether it's soft wire up at the top or right below that notch, which will give you the hard wire cutters. So just something to keep in mind. That is not a flaw. It's just the way they have changed the cutters, and that's kind of the way it is. All right, so make sure you check the pliers. That's really, really important. And then on the inside, also you want to check how easy is it to deploy your implements. It shouldn't be impossible. The thing about the Surge is you can adjust the pivots, but it uses red Loctite, so it's going to be very difficult unless you have the right tools not to strip it. So just be aware of that. If it's too tight that you can't deploy it and there's any other issues, at least reach out to the manufacturer and make sure that you don't have a flawed unit, okay? So this is actually within reason. I don't have any real issues with the way this deploys, and I could always add a little bit of lubricant to make it a lot easier. And then on the other side, it's better. It's less tension, which I prefer, because then I don't have to reach in and try so hard. With deployment, lockup is good, and then this one is good to go. So this would be a great example of a good Leatherman Surge. There are a lot of videos. I'm going to put it back in the box for now, just so I know I've finished it. There's a lot of videos on the Leatherman Surge showcasing how you can loosen up those pliers. I wish that they would, release these tools in a form that is more comfortable, meaning that the plier heads are not as tight. But, here we are. This is pretty standard. I think the only one that has not been that tight I've opened in the last number of years was the Leatherman Arc, what is it called? Onyx, or not Onyx, Leatherman Arc, what is that? The new one, the black one. That one actually had insanely smooth pliers. That's what I wish everything was like. But yeah, in general, you'll find them to be a little bit on the tight side, and you're going to have to work at them to get it exactly how you want it. The same thing's going to be true with the Supertool 300. Do it exactly the same way. We're going to check the pliers. That's the most important thing with this, and this is fine. We definitely want to squeeze it to make sure it's not locked up. And as I say that, I can already tell it's tightening up on me. It's a lot more difficult. The moment I did that, it starts to lock up in the whole range. And so I can fix this, but if this had been any worse than it currently is, I would consider sending it back. This is what you should check. If you have an issue and you don't think you can make it loosen up by using either a mechanical, just repeated use, or a couple of other tricks that are out there, I would recommend sending it back. Okay, so this one is okay. I would put it in the okay range, but it's definitely something I notice. Deployment on the tools, perfectly reasonable. Not a problem there. It's a little bit snug on this side, but it's not too bad. The other side, it's also a little bit easier. Not an issue there. Deploying all the implements, all good. So that's pretty much all you're going to do, but definitely fixate on the pliers because that's where things can get messy. All right, next one is something I talked about on my State of the Multiverse video. I was excited about this more than I realized because I knew there were people in my family who were excited about it. And when I unboxed it, or I should say I didn't unbox it, I gave it to my mom, who is not weak by any stretch of the imagination. She's actually very, very fit. And she was basically incapable of manipulating this tool successfully. And I wasn't sure if it was just confidence or what, but then I tried it myself, and it turns out this particular unit was one of the most difficult I had experienced. So this is the brand new Leatherman Bond with the different colors. And I got excited about this because I noticed that the colorations are very appealing to people. But as I suspected that the tool set was not a good choice, that this particular tool was not the one they should have colored. So we'll be doing a follow-up video talking about that and how they could improve in the future. But the bigger issue here is that this is a very stiff plier head, and for most people that they're trying to market to, if this is overpeened, they're not going to be able to use it. Like, this is more difficult to open than the Super Tool 300 or the Surge was. And so that's unacceptable. I mean, most people will simply return the tool if that's the case. And it's even more true with the blade, because without the right technique and the confidence, it's just so much tension on it, and it just feels a little bit too much for most people. I like the blade shape on the new Bond. I really, really do. I like the blade grind. I like so much about the Leatherman Bond, but I would not have recommended this model if they were trying to target women. This is absolutely one of the more difficult tools to deploy basically anything, and the spring tension on it is so strong. Yeah, it's just not a good choice. But man, the color is very cool. I have to admit, even I like this green. But yeah, we'll talk more about this and the implications for multi-tools for women in the near future. Not happy with that plier head though, absolutely not. That is unacceptable, Leatherman. When I can buy a clone of your tools from other companies and every single time the plier head works flawlessly out of the box, that's a problem. And I've ordered 10 now separately that I've paid for, and all the plier heads are smoother with less tension issues than what I'm seeing the majority of the time. Now the next tool is something that I've never owned, actually. Now I did unbox it already, and I did go through it. Let me show you what I've discovered with the Charge TTi that I got. First and foremost, the S30V blade that they gave me, and the blade grind is the best job I have seen on any blade from Leatherman. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. It is rather coarse, but that's fine. It even has a sharpening choil on there. Color me impressed. This is exactly the way every blade should come. This is fantastic. This is much better. Much, much better. It does have, can you hear it? Just a little bit of up and down play. Not a lot, a little bit. So that's a bit annoying, but it is what it is. None on the serrated blade, none at all. Everything else looks really good on this, and it's very, very smooth on all of these implements. And then the no play on the saw, and very, very smooth. I love that this has 2 bronze washers, 1 on each side for every implement. I love that. Super smooth. All right. Same thing is true here. No movement whatsoever. It's funny. The only thing that has movement is this blade. It does have a little bit up and down. Can you hear it? All right. Yeah, definitely a little bit of something there. Okay, now opening this up, we have our standard tool set. You know, this thing's been around forever. People have reviewed it a billion times. We don't have to show it. But what I am very happy with too, this is by far the most fluid plier that we opened today by a long stretch. So this is far, far better than the Leatherman Bond plier head, and better than both Super Tool 300 and the Surge that we opened. So I would be very pleased if I opened this tool. This tool has basically everything dialed in correctly, and I'm not upset with the tension that's currently on it. That's actually enough that I would not even bother doing the work of grinding it down a little bit more, but I might just put some lubricant in there and call it a day. Like, that's basically all that's necessary. I'm pretty pleased. What I'm not so happy with, however, is the remaining components of the box. This is fine, including the pocket clip and the lanyard. I don't have a problem with that. That I'm grateful for. But what the heck is this? I'm only good enough for 6 bits, really? It's not like these bits are made in the USA. They're not. They're imported from Mexico, okay? As is this plastic holder. Give me the full bit kit. Just pick one of the 2 sides, right? Pick the left side or the right side. So I only have to buy a $15 kit to complete everything. But no, this is like a small fraction. So I still have to pay $30 to buy the complete bit kit. You know what? Take this out. Don't send me a bit kit at all, and knock $10 off the price. How about that? That would be better. And then the sheath. There's something really wrong. I think they may have put the wrong sheath in the box. I genuinely think this might have been a mistake. So this sheath is huge on this Leatherman. You can see how much of a gap there is. And you're like, oh, well, you just don't know what you're talking about. Here is the Leatherman Wave sheath, by the way. This is the proper size, and you can see the difference of the two, okay? So this would be the sheath that they use for the Leatherman Signal, which has the extra length from the hammer, so that is necessary. But the extra part is not necessary if you're talking about the Charge TTi, and this sheath that it came with also doesn't have a spot for the bit kit. So I'm wondering if they just sent the wrong sheath in the box. You're gonna have to let me know down in the comments. Did you get the same sheath, or is it just a mistake? I don't know. I don't know. I really would like to know. So at this point, I'm going to conclude this video. I don't know if it was useful to you, but when you're spending a lot of money, and as you can see, this is, I think, probably the 7th or 8th Leatherman I've purchased this year. I am somebody who supports Leatherman by purchases, so I expect a certain delivery on these tools, and you should as well. You know, they pride themselves on saying they're the best. I'm all about that, but they got to be the best. Thankfully, when it came to the Charge TTi, I really believe that they put their best foot forward on the actual tool, and I'm pretty happy to have this as my example for this model. So great job on the tool itself, but man, the rest of it could use a little work. I would rather them have sent nothing. I like just maybe the tool, even not even the sheath at this point, because like having a nylon sheath with a titanium multi-tool just doesn't feel right. Like a $5 or $1 Chinese-made sheath versus, I don't know, the leather sheath that they sell with the Leatherman rebar. A slightly wider version that fits the Charge TTi would just look so good, right? Yeah, and they did try with the new Leatherman Arc to include a leather sheath. It should be standard. I'm sorry. It should be standard to have a leather sheath with your premium models. Anything over $150 should have a leather sheath. It's going to hold up so well. It's going to look good on your hip, right? And if you're going to wear a sheath, you want it to look good. I mean, heck, I spend a lot of money on sheaths because I want them to not only look, but also to feel incredibly comfortable. I definitely want to see a little bit more improvement. Like they did with the Bond here in this case. That was the one thing that I think we can take away. They're starting to realize how the attachments are just as important as the tool and how they can be perceived. I am curious to hear your thoughts down in the description. If there's something that you'd like to see that I have not shown yet, let me know. As always, thank you guys so much for your time, and we'll talk again soon.